And more than that, I think as business owners, we forget the power of our own story. So,
Mm,
I talk a lot about marketing, and you can dress marketing up however you want. But ultimately, it's the ability to tell the story of you, your business, and your people within your business if you have them. Like I don't
right.
intentionally, but it's
Is it just,
but I've learned to articulate my story, and I enjoy telling my story because I know it entertains people in the way that I tell it. It's not because I
yeah,
feel self-important and that's what a lot of people worry about, right? In this day and age, is they worry that they sound as though they're bragging, or they're not humble, or they're trying to
right.
show off. And I think that comes from, correct me if I'm wrong, like I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Adrian, but I think that
Mm,
comes from having the wrong mindset when you're telling the story in the first place.
mm, yeah. I think it could also I've been thinking a lot about this. For those who watched the first episode, you probably get that I'm the guy who goes as deep as I go down these rabbit holes. And I've been thinking a lot about the power of story, but more importantly, the value of story when it comes to business and marketing. And I noticed that some companies I worked at, where if you go all the way back to the genesis of the company, they started the company because they had a passion for something, or they had a need to go out and do this thing, was a purpose in life. Those stories then continue on through the company's sort of through line of their, the linear life of the company, and they become easier and easier to tell because they're authentic and they're real. And the companies that get started because I want to make money, well, and that's the only reason I'm starting this company. I don't care what I'm selling. I'm just going to sell something. Those stories tend to fall flat. In fact, the customer tends to get immediately, oh, you're just selling something. You don't really, there's no passion, there's no reason, there's just money, and that's all it is. And they get turned off by that. I really do believe that's true. I sense it as a customer myself. You can just see it in the advertising. And it's because the marketing team that goes to create those messages doesn't really have any base to come from.
Yeah.
And so so they have to create something out of thin air. And sometimes there's an amazing campaign, but in general,
Mm.
they'll fall flat.
And it links with the company vision as well, right? So you can tell that they have an engaging story to tell because they understand that they want to make an impact that's bigger than making revenue in the business. And I think
Right.
that's
Right.
that's so powerful to help with your marketing, because it's kind of like I've said for a long time, I love to talk to purpose-driven businesses, because a purpose-driven business, a purpose-centric business, can shout from the rooftops about what they do all day long, as often
Hmm.
as they want, because nobody's going to accuse them of spamming people or pitch slapping people
Right.
or being boring or
Right.
monotonous, because there's an ultimate greater good behind what they do. But there are businesses other than purpose-driven businesses that find the ability to do that because they've tied their origin story, traced it all the way through to the company vision, and they live by that and breathe it. Is that fair?
Right. Yeah, that's totally fair. And I think it all stems from having, like for the purpose driven business, there's a backstory. There's a reason they're purpose driven, right? There's that thing. There's the purpose. If you don't have that backstory, then it all falls flat. And to your point about AI, I think where we are right now is that AI doesn't create a backstory. It just creates the story in the moment. And that's why a lot of times they fall flat. I've done this many times where, you have someone say, hey, put together a purpose statement for our website, but the company has no real purpose. And so you can read in that statement that it doesn't feel real. And then you use AI to make it better. And maybe it's crafted better as a written piece, a paragraph, but there's still no backstory, and that comes through. It falls flat. Um, well, I wanted to this is backstory thing has been on my mind so much lately because I'm realizing how important it is for all of the things we just talked about. And I went back to prior to this recording, I wanted to go back and look at some of the things I'd done in the past. And, we talked about John Hughes, and I started my career as a writer. One of the things that John did and taught me, and I think what makes the difference between a good film or a good piece of entertainment or content versus a great piece. The difference there is that backstory. John didn't just sit down and write, 16 Candles or whatever the movie was and tell that story of just that moment. He took months and months and months and mapped out the backstories of those characters so that when he finally told the story that we went to see in the movie theater, it felt like these characters were fuller, they are more developed, but you didn't know why. You might not have even known the backstories. It's only for John on his wall, on his not written on his papers. You go to the theater and you experience this, and it feels deeper. It feels more real, authentic. You can identify with the characters. It feels relevant, and that's what he taught me. That's due to taking that time to create real backstories for these fictional characters. And so I started diving into that and started realizing, oh, wait a second, that's also the difference in business and marketing, right? Like, so you sit down and you write out a character that's and you have all these archetypes for characters, and good writers can just figure out, okay, I need an anti-hero, I need a wise old blah, 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 and then you put them together and you make a movie. But if you take that extra time and write all those backstories of those characters, that when you actually go to write that movie, it's going to even be a greater experience for you as the writer. So there is more value in the movie. The movies do better. They perform better at the box office. They get more awards. They potentially could create, a historic filmmaker status for someone like John or Tarantino or some of these guys who really know how to do it. If you take that and push that into the world of business, it's the same thing. And so I started diving down into the value of story recently. And I started looking at, okay, these brands have great backstories. It's Coca-Cola or whatever, Nike, whatever that backstory is. And we all know those backstories. We know the sort of linear arc of Nike and how where different celebrities came in along the way, like Michael Jordan, and how that changed the company.